The taste of donuts and latkes are still fresh in our mouths. We just came off of the iris of Menorah, of Hanukkah, and at that time we felt connected, we felt inspired and uplifted. And now seemingly it's all over. We look outside, it's dark, it's very early, the Shkia, the sun sets very early, the Nates, the sun rises very late. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to tap into Zois Hanukkah, we learned and discussed the tremendous opportunity that the day holds, and hopefully we utilized it. We davened, we prayed for ourselves, for others, for everything we want and need, the constant, the never-ending, Meru b'tzarech amcha. We need bracha, we need hatzlacha, we need shefa, we need shidduchim, we need zivugim, parnasa, Jarashow kayama, never-ending lists. And that's what Hashem wants from us, to daven, to pray, and to channel everything to Him. While we daven for these things, it's not only important, but it is absolutely incumbent upon all of us to remember that the one sole address for everything is our loving Father in heaven, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at the same time, it is important to consider what happens when we pour our hearts out in tefillah, in fervent tefillah. We channel everything to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and at times we don't see the results we hope for. Especially after this time of Hanukkah, we hope for Nisim and for the Iris and for the Kedusha, everything to uplift us, for things to change. For Nisim, what happens when we invest, when we hope, and we encounter rejection, disappointment, or shattered hopes? Perhaps someone davened for a sick sister on Zois Hanukkah, poured out their heart. There was someone who needs tremendous parnasa, tremendous financial turmoil, and they davened, and the next day maybe the sister passed away, or maybe the person they prayed for a job, the answer was no, or they had some sort of job and they got fired from that, who knows? And it's important after these times to realize, when we quote unquote go back into the darkness, go back into the daily grind, to realize that these situations can manifest in countless ways. And when we want light, we want miracles, when we seek happiness and joy, and instead we encounter darkness, difficulty, rejection, and disappointment, it's important to learn and to know the proper perspective, how to respond, how to live with that response from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does the Torah mandate? What does the Torah want from us? What does the Torah teach us in these situations? And more fundamentally, what is the truth and only perspective for these times? I read an incredible Maisa from the great Rav Melech Biderman, takes us back, going back to the 12th century, the times of the Ramban, of the Rishonim, and there was a sick young boy. The Ramban had a sickly Talmud who carried a deep question. He was destined to pass away at a young age, and before he died, he turned to his rabbi, the Ramban, and he asked for clarity. He wanted perspective. He wanted to simply understand that why had he been given this life that seemed filled with misery, pain, and ultimately ended so young, unaccomplished, and feeling unfulfilled? What did Kadosh Baruch Hu want? What was his tachlis? What was his purpose? And he went to the Ramban, and he poured out his heart, and he said, Rebbe, before I go, I want to understand this. And the Ramban reassured the Talmud, and he said he's going to help. And he told the young man, he said, listen, he said, you're going to go to Olam Emes. You're going to the world of truth, the next world, the world of light, the world of clarity, the world where the Shekhinah resides. And the Ramban promised this Talmud that he's going to write him a kameya, an amulet, to be buried along with him. And this kameya would grant him access to every special, exclusive chamber called Kisis Lemishpat, the thrones of justice. And in that chamber, the Ramban said, you, my dear Talmud, going to the next world, it's going to grant you access to all of the questions. Ask all the questions you want. Seek all the clarity. And especially ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu why you died so young. And make sure to ask, said the Ramban, another question. Why the Jewish nation suffers so many tzaras. The Kachava, this young bacher, passed away. And sometime later, a few months passed, the Ramban was sitting and he was learning Torah near a window, and suddenly the window opened, and in some shape or form, this Talmud reappeared as though he was alive. And the Ramban said, "Oh, Shalom Aleichem, I was expecting you to come back." The Rishonim lived with a whole different level. We're expecting this neshama to come back, but yeah, the neshama came back through the window, and the Ramban encountered him, greeted him, and said, "No, what happened? You went to the Olam Emes. What about the shalas I told you to ask? Did you ask them? Why did you die early? What's with the tzaras of Klal Yisrael? I gave you direct access. I gave you that kameya, that you're able to go to the kisas lamishpat, to the places where only VIPs are allowed." And the Bacha responded, and he said, "Rebbe, with your kameya in hand, I taka went from chamber to chamber. I went to the kisas lamishpat, and indeed, not one malach stopped me in my track. And I reached that chamber, the chamber of kisas lamishpat, but I did not ask the questions you instructed me to ask, because Hashem's kindness is revealed in that chamber. And even matters that seem so bad and so uncertain and so dark, in that place, I see that they are solely for the good. And therefore, Rebbe, I had nothing to ask." The perspective is that we don't know the best, we don't know what's best, and we don't have the master plan. But the one thing we do know is that even when it seems dark, even when we do not have the answers, even when the outcomes are not as we expected, but, big however, in the place of truth, in the place of emes, of real light, in the place where the divine providence resides, everything fits perfectly. Everything is truly good, and nothing is missing. There's no such thing as darkness. Feelings of depression, negativity, anxiety, and worry can only exist where our bitachon, our trust in Hashem, is lacking. And granted, it's almost impossible to be perfect, to be a wholesome Baal bitachon in all times and all situations, and that's why these feelings arise. But in the place of truth, in that place of kisas lamishpat, everything is perfect. As the disciple, this Talmud of the Ramban, witnessed himself when he was prompted and given the opportunity to ask all of his questions in this kisas lamishpat, he found that there was nothing to ask. Everything there made sense, everything was complete, and everything was good. In this week's Parsha, after Yosef reveals himself to Yaakov Avinu prepares to leave Eretz Yisrael and descend to Mitzrayim. Yaakov understands exactly what this moment represents. This descent is not merely geographical, it wasn't just relocating from Eretz Yisrael to Mitzrayim. Yaakov Avinu was keenly aware it was the beginning of Galus, the opening of one of the darkest periods in Jewish history, a reality that will bring centuries of suffering to his children, to his descendants. And before Yaakov Avinu takes this step, the Torah records a dialogue between Yaakov and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a dialogue that at face value doesn't necessarily speak volumes, but with the Torah I saw from Rabbi Melech Biderman, it's not just a life yisoid, it's life-changing, it's life-building, it's unbelievable. It says in the Pasuk, Vayimer Elokim Yisrael b'maras halayla, that Hashem came to Yaakov b'maras halayla, Vayimer Yaakov, Vayimer Hineni. Yaakov said, "I'm here, Hineni, here I am." On a simple level, b'maras halayla means that Hashem appeared to Yaakov in a prophetic vision at night. B'maras halayla, in a vision, in a nevuah, balayla, at night. But b'maras halayla appears embedded within the pasuk. It seems to be part of the context, part of the story, suggesting that it's not just describing a time period of when Hashem appeared, but more profoundly, how Hashem appeared. And the pshat is that the Torah is teaching us that Yaakov Avinu was about to enter Laila. Not literal night, but a spiritual darkness. Galus, Hester Panim, a reality in which the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu would feel hidden and distant. And Hashem therefore appears to Yaakov specifically in the Bechina of Maras HaLaila, which means a vision of night. And this is a revelation that comes clothed in darkness. In other words, what lies ahead will look like Laila, but it will only be a mara, an appearance, an illusion to Laila, but it's not actual Laila, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is communicating to Yaakov Avinu that with me, when you're holding my hands, when you're in my clutches, biyadai afkid ruchi, when you give yourself to me, when you give your soul, you give your everything, you submit and you give up everything to me, there's no such thing as Laila. It's all a facade. And even the darkness itself is a form of revelation. And Hashem is showing Yaakov that he's present even when he seems concealed. That's what it means, b'maras halayla. Yaakov Avinu was about to feel Laila Dik, and Hashem was appearing. It wasn't just a time of day, but Hashem was appearing b'maras halayla, and Hashem was saying, you're going to feel Laila, but if you're with me, it's maras halayla. Then you're going to be zeichet to realize that it's only maras. It's only an illusion. It's only a hint to Laila, but there's no such thing as really Laila when you're with me. With this understanding, we can shed light on Yaakov Avinu's response. When Yaakov says, Hineni isn't a simple acknowledgement. It's not the most normal, typical response that we find in the Torah. Hineni is a demonstration of Yaakov's complete presence. Yaakov isn't merely hearing the words. He's not saying, Vayishma Yaakov, but Yaakov is internalizing this new mode of the divine, of the relationship, of Dveikus, that even when Hashem appears through concealment, Yaakov Avinu is saying, Hineni, I'm fully here and I'm ready. I'm ready to experience this. I'm ready to go through this because I know it's all you. And then, only after Yaakov reaches this level of Amunah B'tachon, does Hashem continue. And Hashem continues to reassure Yaakov Avinu. And he says, Al tira merda mitzrayma ki l'gagadol asimcha shama. Anichi ered imcha mitzrayma. Hashem says, don't fear the descent because I myself will go down with you. The reassurance comes only after Yaakov's Hineni. Only once Yaakov understands that Laila is only a Mara, once he accepts that Hashem is present even within the darkness. Fear no longer defines the descent. This is not only the story of Yaakov Avinu. Every Yid encounters moments of Maras Laila, times that feel dark, confusing, and empty of clarity. And the Torah teaches us the perspective. It teaches us that these moments may look like Laila, but they are not actually darkness. They're not true darkness. They're a Mara. They're a mirage. They're a vision. They're a hint. But when Hashem is there, even when He is hidden, it's all good. It's all toiv. It's all gamzul toiva. And when a person can say Hineni, not because it is easy, it's very hard, and Hashem knows that, but because they trust that Hashem is present even here, that itself transforms the night. That itself gives perspective, gives chizuk, and reminds us that even in the dark, Hashem is there, and that reminds us the truth, that there's no such thing as darkness, because with the Kadosh Baruch Hu is Kol Man Da'av Rachman Al-Tav Ovid. Everything is for the best, everything is part of the plan, and Hashem is always supervising, carrying us, worrying for us, and loving us with His infinite love. On this topic of darkness and seeing the Yad Hashem, even in the Hester, the Baba Rebbe told the following Maisa, the following story about himself, that during the Second World War, there was a brief period when it was only possible to obtain passports through Costa Rica, which would save a person from the Nazis. And the Rebbe went out and he invested enormous sums of money to secure passports for himself and for his family. And finally the day came to collect the documents, and he had everything, but he was told that the operation had suddenly been shut down and no passports were being issued. The Rebbe invested tons of money and time, and he was hopeful, anticipation. He was going to save himself and his family, his young kids, his wife, from the hands of the devils, from these monsters. This was his only way out, getting to Costa Rica. And the Rebbe was absolutely shattered. He thought his life was over. And aside from the great financial loss, this had seemed like the only viable escape. The Rebbe, knowing that there's always hope, knowing that the Eibush is always watching, always orchestrating, and always caring, even in the darkest situations, the Rebbe decided he's not just going to go home and break the news to his family that the game is over. He didn't want to return to his family empty-handed. So he went to the Beis Medrash to learn and seek some chizuk. And he opened the Sefer Kabbalah, the Sefer Tiferes Uziel. And he opened to a page which cited the following pasuk. Pasuk and tell him, Rachak mishuasi, divir shagasi, elekai ekor yoimim v'leisane, v'layla v'leidum yali. Which means, far from my salvation are the words of my roar. My God, I call out by day, and you do not answer. And by night, there is no rest for me. The Sefer Kabbalah cited a pirush from the Shla Kaddish, which expounded shtelzu the pasuk of Anis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Es Ratzain Elikim B'Rav Chazdecha Aneni Be'emes Yishacha, which means a person often davens for something he believes is good, when in truth it is not. And therefore says the Shla that one should daven that Hashem answer only be'emes, with truth. Give me what is truly my Yeshua. And this is the meaning of the first pasuk that he saw. If my request is far from my true salvation, then ekara yoimam v'leisane. Hashem, I'm asking you, do not answer. And from learning this insight, from learning this Torah from the Sefer Kabbalah, this gave the Rebbe tremendous chizik and comfort. He was mechuzik, and he understood that whatever happened with the passport, with Costa Rica, even though he invested money and his life literally, seemingly depended on it, ultimately it would be for the best for himself, for his wife, for his mishpacha, for his family, for his children. And he realized and he fortified himself with the clear yediyah brura, the knowledge that Hashem is always protecting him and his family from harm's way. And although it appeared absolutely devastating, somehow it was for his good. And with this clarity, he returned home. Months went by, and soon the Rebbe was informed that all those who received the Costa Rica passports, those documents, Rahman al-Islam, were killed. And it was only because the operation didn't work out, and all the money that he invested, that was all saving the Rebbe and his family. All the money, all the investments weren't for naught. It all ultimately was paving the picture. It was the darkness, but it was him coming back and realizing it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's precisely what saved him, because the passports never came. Because Costa Rica didn't work out, all those that went to Costa Rica were killed, and him and his family were left behind. Although that was the most devastating news that could have been at the time, was ultimately his salvation. Saved him and his family's life. And the message is clear, that when we feel like disappointment, delay, or loss in this world, can actually be the greatest act of Chesed Hashem. Hashem's ways are far beyond our understanding. Hashem doesn't give us the master plan, Hashem doesn't give us the play role. And sometimes what seems devastating is exactly what protects us, what guides us, and preserves what is truly good. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wisdom, His infinite wisdom, everything is for our benefit, even when we can't see it at the time. So, returning to where we began, after Chanukah, the lights are out, the days are short, and there's darkness, and we daven, and we hope for answers. And our question was, what do we do when the response isn't the way we intended, the way we hoped? When we were inspired, when we felt close, and now we find ourselves waiting, the answers we didn't want, the answers didn't come the way we hoped. The light feels distant, the days are short, the nights are long, and the darkness begins to weigh on us. What do we do? But at times like this, the Torah reminds us, the Torah tells us that we can feel Hashem through His hidden attribute, not through the open light, not through clarity, but through concealment. It can feel as though the aura of Chanukah has faded, replaced by Laila. But this is what we must remember, that when we have Hashem, when we truly believe in Hashem, Hashem is holding us, and biyadai afkiruchi, I deposit my ruach, my everything in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and realize He's the source of all light. Then nothing is random, nothing is dark, nothing is outside His plan. Everything is for good. Komanda of Rahman and Tav of it, it's for our benefit, even when we can't see it. There are moments when we wish the outcome were different, when we do not understand why our tefillos were not answered as we imagined. But when we surrender, when we submit ourselves to Hashem with emunah b'tachon, and we stop demanding, we stop insisting, and rather we accept that we do not see the full picture, and that He does, then Laila, darkness and hardship, is not what we want, but with the right perspective, we know that it is not true darkness at all. It is only Maras Laila, a vision of night, merely an illusion. Because in the world of emes, in the world of truth, even in the night, even in the darkness, there is light.